Turbo finally went out. Watch the gauge on the right. That's 3/4 of the way to the floor. That's floored right there. I've got no boost. I had 10 pounds earlier today. It stumbles when it hits that zero mark. It's wanting air and it just falls flat on its face. These things are tuned to run with boost, and there is none. Yep. Time for turbo. Well, so we've kind of determined that the turbo is just taking a dump. So the first thing you got to do is pull this corner piece out and stick your screwdriver in there and loosen the petcock for the radiator. Try and collect as much antifreeze as you can. I had the blue one in here to put the motor in it, but this is the only thing I got to drive, so the blue one got put on hold for tonight anyways. I got to get a turbo in this so at least I have wheels. I brought it home and it was literally had no boost. I knew the turbo was going out because the boost gauge was chattering. You know, it was jumping around real bad because the turbine was wallering around inside the hole, not creating constant pressure, but, you know, almost acting like a pump. Instead of being a, like a smooth pressure, it was just pump, 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 pump. So anyways, I do have a turbo. I actually have one I took off car I scrapped, and it's got a good turbine in it. This is actually my bad spare. Okay, that's got quite a bit of play in it. It's not hitting the housing yet, but it's got enough play in it, it's no good. See, this one here has almost no play. I mean, maybe a hair, but I mean, there's hardly anything. And see how this is dry on the inside? I guarantee you when I pull the snout off of this other one, it's going to be wet with oil. Alright, so we're going to get this water drained. I got to get some of this stuff picked up in the shop and let it cool off a minute and we'll pull it in. There's a few pieces I didn't film. I took the air box out, the air intake piece to the front of the turbo. You can't see it, but it's got oil in the front of it. I took the oil feed line, the coolant line off, which is laying up here on top of the engine. I'm working on the bottom bolts for the back of the converter. You got to take the air conditioner compressor off the motor to get to the coolant or the oil return line and that bracket. And then you go ahead and take that piece out of there too so you can work a little better. And now I probably worked on it an hour to get those 3 or 4 pieces out. Then we get these 3 turbo bolts out and then get the 10 exhaust manifold bolts out, and that whole turbo will come loose. You got a coolant line right here that has like a big banjo Allen head bolt, goes into the side of the block, and that's just basically coolant return. This is coolant pressure. And then you got oil here, and you can see it's about plugged up. And we're working. Alright, I got the turbo out. Got all this mess cleaned up that was over here. You know, this turbo's been leaking oil into this tube. Here's the turbo on the ground. But the thing is, I was thinking either the wastegate had stuck or the turbo was just junk. But I mean, it's loose, but it's not junk. Don't look at my thumb, look at the thing I'm moving. It's hard to see. I mean, it moves a little bit, but it's not scraping. So I figured out why I lost all my boost. I was explaining that what I'd have to do is rehook this up, put a fitting in here, pressurize this to 10 pounds, and then listen for a leak. And it's more than likely over here going to be here cracked after cooler, or the turbo boost sensor has popped out. I walked over here and looked what I found. Okay, is that a little more obvious? Don't know how it popped out because the clip is still in it. But it's definitely out. So, I needed to change the turbo anyways. I admit when I screwed up, I should have actually gone and checked this a lot further. But you can see the oil, if you look right here. This thing has been leaking. You can see the oil. It's running right here on the frame rails. So this O-ring that I'm moving with my fingers is more than likely bad. So I'm going to have to get an O-ring. And you can see the actual oil that's been pumping out of here. So I'm going to change that turbo anyways. And I'm going to pull this off and clean it up. So, there you go. Alright, I got a new seal for this elbow here. And you can see it's snapped all the way in. Okay. Now what I've done is I put the exhaust side of the turbo hose on, which goes to the elbow, which goes all along the front of the car, and then it has a rubber hose to the aftercooler, and then this pipe from the aftercooler to here. So what we're going to do is I have a fitting in the end of this. Now, this is actually kind of like a blow-off valve, and we're going to test that to make sure there's no air coming out of it. We're going to set this up here, and I'm going to go plug this in, and you'll hear it. Okay, we don't hear anything, right? Other than the air hissing that's going in. Okay, just pump that up about 3 pounds. You can hear it hissing over there off that blow-off valve. But that blow-off valve is only supposed to let off so many pounds. You see, I can't hold it over here, and that doesn't change there. So we don't have any leaks, at least none that I can. And I can hold this on there pretty hard. And I don't hear nothing leaking. So we're good there. What I do is I have my regulator cranked down to about 10 psi, and that's what you hear blowing out of this hose here. Alright, since I got the motor tore down, I didn't even see putting 20 bucks oil and filter in it, run it for 2 or 3 days, and I needed an oil pump anyway, so I had them express mail me an oil pump. But you figured they sent me the wrong tube, so I'm gonna see what my tube looks like when I take it out, and then I'm gonna get at it because I got to get this thing done. I'm down to walking basically. All the Volkswagens I got, the kids got them all, so I got to get busy. Okay, we got the car up on jack stands. You want to get it up so you can crawl around underneath it. We're going to take the 2 motor mounts loose, this one and the other one. Rather than try and get them from up top, we'll take them loose at the bottom and just leave them attached to the mounts. You want to take the EGR valve off the back of the motor, which is right there. Take that off. It's got 3 bolts, 6mm Allen head. Because we're going to pick the motor up, and it's going to almost hit the, not almost, it's going to hit. Because you need to get it up as high as you can. We're actually going to take the fan off. We're going to take the belt off and take the fan hub off, because when we pick the motor up, we don't want the motor hitting, or the fan hitting the shroud right there. And that'll be it for up here. The exhaust is already, knocked loose, just sitting there because they've got the turbo off. And then we're just basically going to pick the motor up and start wrenching parts off of it. Alright, with the motor mounts disconnected, radiator hose, water bottle. That's because the throttle body gets up into that. Get that radiator hose off because it doesn't stretch that far. See, I got the fan off, just sitting here. Everything else is okay. The temperature sensor hits on the back. That's as far up as you can go. And then that'll give you enough clearance to do any work you need to do under here to get this oil pan off. And we'll be good to go. There's the oil pan, actually. See how fine the mesh is on that factory pickup tube without all the holes in it? There is an aftermarket one's got, the holes are double the size. And this is one I actually made. This is what it used to look like. This is what it's supposed to look like. Okay? And this is the one I made. What I did is I had a long one, I just cut it and chopped it down and brazed it back up. I'm going to clean it up with a grinder right now. There's the homemade pickup tube installed. And there's what the factory one would be like right there. And cleaned up. Got some assembly lube on the O-ring and ready to go back in. Okay, this is my old oil pump. My old pickup, the old O-ring. Now if you see how easily these two fit together, this almost falls out of there. This O-ring is so dry and hard and brittle. I mean, it doesn't even, that's what I'm saying. When this builds up a vacuum in the oil, it's sucking air around here. Because all it takes is just a thousandth of an inch, and it'll just draw up air. And then it's just like sucking a milkshake through a busted soda straw. And there's where my regular oil pressure is going, or it's either that or this bypass valve in the oil pump is sticking. What happens is this oil pump is designed to pump, say, 50 pounds of oil pressure, and this spring will move back and a ball bearing will expose this hole, and oil will just blow back into the oil pan. If this thing opens up and sticks, when you slow the car down, then it just pumps the oil back in the oil pan. It doesn't pump it through the engine. So there's that one. There's my new one. New pickup tube. There's the angle of the pickup tube versus the new one. It's like new money.